Title: The Little Janitor's Son Saved the Billionaire's Important Guest, but no one believed in him. The boy nobody noticed. The first scream did not come from the elevator. It came from Leo's mother. Her voice tore through the shining marble lobby of the most expensive building in the city, sharp enough to make suited men turn and frown, but not sharp enough to make them care. "Leo! Come back here!" The boy had already slipped past the velvet rope. He was small for 10, with narrow shoulders and bright, serious eyes that made adults uncomfortable because they seemed to notice too much. His school uniform had faded from too many washes. His sneakers were clean, but the soles were beginning to peel. He should not have belonged in a building like Hale Dominion Tower, where the floors reflected crystal chandeliers and the air smelled like money, lemon polish, and expensive perfume. But his father did. Or at least, he worked there. Daniel Cole was one of the night janitors, quiet, invisible, the kind of man rich people passed every day without ever once seeing his face. He knew which executives left lipstick on glass conference tables, which assistants cried in bathroom stalls, which board members screamed at interns when doors were closed. He knew where dust collected behind power outlets and beneath polished steel planters. He knew the building better than some of the people who owned pieces of it. And yet, to them, he was still just the janitor. That afternoon, Daniel had asked his wife, Mara, to bring Leo by the tower after school because he had picked up an extra shift. They needed the money. Rent was due in 4 days. The electricity bill sat folded in Mara's bag like a threat. Their landlord had already begun using that special polite voice people used right before cruelty. So Mara had brought Leo. She regretted it the moment they entered the lobby. Men in tailored suits brushed past them like they were furniture. Women in sharp heels spoke into phones worth more than their monthly groceries. Security guards looked at Mara's simple blouse and Leo's worn backpack with a kind of suspicion reserved for people who looked poor in rich places. "Stay beside me," Mara had whispered. Leo nodded. He always nodded. He was a good boy. Too good, sometimes. The kind who watched, listened, remembered things. Then the lights flickered. Just once. Not enough to cause panic, but enough to make the lobby go still for half a second. Then came the muffled metallic groan from somewhere above. The elevator. Most people ignored it. Leo didn't. His head turned immediately toward the polished brass elevator bank on the far side of the lobby. He noticed what adults did not do. The center elevator's floor number had frozen between 18 and 19. He noticed the red emergency indicator blinking faintly. He noticed the receptionist suddenly stiffening her desk. And then he heard it. A woman's voice through the emergency intercom. Small. Strained. "I can't breathe in here." Leo moved before he thought. He ran toward the elevator. "Leo!" Mara shouted again, fear cracking her voice. "Stop!" But Leo was already there, staring up at the steel doors like he could see through them. His hand pressed against the cool metal. Inside, someone hit the alarm. Again. And again. The sound made everyone in the lobby turn now. Phones lowered. Conversations paused. Security converged. The receptionist rose halfway from her desk, voice suddenly shaky. "Sir, I think it's Ms. Evelyn Vale." That name changed everything. A silence swept through the lobby so fast it was almost visible. Evelyn Vale. Not just any guest. A billionaire investor. A woman important enough to make CEOs sweat. A woman whose arrival that afternoon had put the entire building on edge. And she was trapped. Leo put his ear closer to the elevator door. "I hear her," he said. One of the guards stepped forward. "Kid, back away." Leo didn't move. "She's really scared," he whispered. The guard grabbed his shoulder and pulled him aside. Mara rushed forward and held her son tightly, embarrassed and afraid all at once. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly. "He didn't mean, he just—" "No children near the elevator," the guard snapped. Leo struggled gently in his mother's arms. "Mama, she's in trouble." "I know," Mara whispered, but her face had gone pale. "Please, Leo. Just be quiet." But Leo kept staring at the closed elevator doors. Because while everyone else was looking at one trapped billionaire guest, he was thinking of something different. A sound. A tremor in the cables. The kind of shaking his father once explained to him when they passed an open service shaft during a weekend cleanup shift. "If an elevator stops wrong," his father had said, "the worst thing isn't always the stopping. It's the panic after." Now Leo remembered every word. And when the voice came again through the intercom, more frightened this time, he understood something no one else in the lobby had yet realized. The woman inside was not just trapped. She was close to losing control. And if nobody calmed her down soon, something worse was coming. The men in suits began barking into phones. "Security! Call engineers!" The receptionist nearly cried. But it was the little janitor's son who stepped forward and said the words no one expected. The laugh that burned. The laughter was not loud. That was what made it hurt more. It came in scattered pieces, one snort from a security guard, a short disbelieving chuckle from a man in an expensive navy suit, a dry laugh from a woman near the reception desk who looked at Leo the same way people looked at stray dogs that wandered into weddings. Not one of them saw a child trying to help. They saw a poor boy who did not know his place. Mara felt the heat of humiliation rise up her neck so fast it almost made her dizzy. She pulled Leo closer to her side, fingers tightening around his wrist. "Don't say another word," she whispered. But Leo's eyes stayed on the elevator. He was listening harder than any of the adults around him. Inside the stalled car, the alarm had stopped. Not because the woman was calm, but because she was getting worse. The intercom crackled. "Hello," came the woman's voice, unsteady now. "Why is nobody getting me out?" The receptionist grabbed the emergency phone with trembling fingers. "Ms. Vale, please remain calm. We're contacting building engineering now." "Now?" the woman snapped. "What do you mean now? I've been stuck in here for 6 minutes." The receptionist looked helplessly at the tower manager, a square-jawed man named Bradley Hurst who had spent the entire week rehearsing how to impress Evelyn Vale. Now his face had gone grey. He stepped forward, smoothing his tie even as sweat gathered at his temples. "Ms. Vale, this is Bradley Hurst, Building Operations Director. We are handling the issue." "You're handling it?" Evelyn shot back. "I'm trapped in a metal box that smells like overheated wiring. Your alarm is screaming in my ear, and somebody better tell me why this elevator is shaking." That word hit Leo like a bell. Shaking. He looked up sharply. There it was again, barely noticeable to anyone else. A faint vibration in the doors. Tiny. Uneven. Not violent. Not yet. But wrong. "Mama," he said quietly, tugging her sleeve. "Not now, Leo." "No, Mama, listen. It's doing that thing Daddy said." "Leo. He told me if it stops between floors and starts trembling." "Enough. I think I can help her." And that was the exact moment the entire lobby looked at him. And laughed. Her voice came out harsher than she intended. Fear had wrapped around her heart so tightly she could barely breathe herself. She wasn't angry at Leo. She was terrified. Terrified of security. Terrified of being blamed. Terrified of being thrown out. Terrified that in places like this, poor people were punished even when they did nothing wrong. Especially when they did nothing wrong. Daniel was still upstairs somewhere on the service level, unaware that his son was standing a few feet from a trapped billionaire and trying to be heard. Bradley barked at security. "Where's engineering?" "On the way." "That's not good enough." One of the executives whispered to another, "If Vale pulls out of the merger because of this, the board will tear us apart." Leo heard that too. Adults always forgot children could hear. He looked back at the elevator and took a step toward it. A guard blocked him with one arm. "Didn't I tell you to stay back?" Leo swallowed. "She needs someone to talk to." The guard stared at him like he had spoken nonsense. "She's panicking," Leo said. "If she keeps panicking, it'll get worse." Bradley turned, irritation flaring. "Whose child is this?" Mara raised a shaking hand. "Mine. I'm sorry, sir." "Control him." The words landed like a slap. Mara nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." But then the voice from the intercom came again, thinner this time. "I said I can't breathe." Leo's whole body stiffened. It was not just fear in that voice now. It was the beginning of something more dangerous. The kind of panic that made people forget sense. The kind that made them pound doors, hyperventilate, collapse. Leo had heard it once before. 2 years ago, on a city bus, an old man had gotten trapped between folding doors and started screaming before anyone could help him. Leo had remembered how his teacher later explained panic attacks to the class after one student broke down during a fire drill. "Sometimes," she had said gently, "the body thinks danger is bigger than it is. The best thing you can do is give calm directions. One simple thing at a time." One simple thing at a time. Leo looked up at the reception desk. Then at the intercom panel. Then back to the elevator. "I know what to say to her," he said. Nobody answered. So he said it louder. "I know what to say." This time the whole lobby turned. Bradley's face hardened. "Get this boy away from here." Mara's stomach dropped. Two guards stepped forward. Leo's eyes filled, not with tears, but with frustration. "Please," he said, voice breaking. "She's scared. And you think you know better than train staff." Bradley snapped. Leo hesitated. Then told the truth. "No," he said softly. "I just think she needs someone who won't sound scared too." That shut the room up for half a second. Because he was right. The receptionist sounded scared. Bradley sounded scared. The guards looked scared. Everyone in that glittering lobby, all those polished adults with power and titles and expensive shoes, they were scared. But the little janitor's son was not. Mara felt her chest tighten painfully. She wanted to drag him away. She wanted to protect him. She wanted, for one impossible second, for someone in that room to see what she saw every day, that her boy was not foolish, not troublesome, not out of place. He was kind. He was observant. He was brave in quiet ways. Then the elevator jolted. A sharp metallic shudder ran through the doors. Gasps broke out across the lobby. Inside, Evelyn Vale screamed. And before anyone could stop him, Leo tore free from his mother's hand, ran to the emergency speaker panel, and shouted through it. My name is Leo. Please listen to me." The whole lobby froze. Because the screaming inside the elevator stopped. The voice in the metal box. For one breathless moment, all of Hale Dominion Tower went silent. Not calm. Stunned. The kind of silence that falls when something unexpected happens and everyone is too shocked to interrupt it. Leo stood on tiptoe at the emergency speaker panel, his small fingers gripping the polished edge of the desk beneath it. The microphone light glowed red beside his cheek. His chest rose and fell quickly, but his voice, when he spoke again, was steady. He said. "Can you hear me?" Static hissed. Then came the woman's answer, weaker now. "Yes." Every adult in the lobby exchanged looks. She had responded to him. Not to Bradley, not to security. Not to the receptionist. To the child they had just mocked. Leo glanced once at his mother. Mara stood frozen, hand over her mouth, eyes huge with fear and disbelief. She wanted to yank him back. She wanted to protect him from whatever would come next if he failed. But she also saw something she had seen since he was very little. When Leo focused on helping someone, the whole world disappeared around him. He wasn't thinking about rich people. Or rules. Or embarrassment. He was only thinking about the frightened woman trapped behind the steel doors. "My teacher taught us something," Leo says into the speaker. "Can you do something for me?" On the other side of the door, Evelyn Vale gave a shaky laugh that sounded more like a gasp. "A child is leading my rescue now." A few executives shifted uncomfortably. Leo didn't flinch. "No, I'm just talking to you while the grown-ups fix things." That almost made one of the guards smile. Almost. Inside the elevator, Evelyn breathed raggedly. "I don't like closed spaces." Leo nodded, as if she could see him. "Okay. Then we're not going to think about the whole elevator." Bradley stepped forward sharply. "That's enough. Turn that off." But before he could reach the panel, Evelyn's voice came back. "No. Let him talk." Bradley stopped dead. The lobby stared. Leo continued. "Can you tell me your name?" A pause. As if she wasn't used to being asked like that. As if everyone usually already knew. "Evelyn," she said at last. "Okay, Evelyn. My name is Leo. I'm 10. Another pause. Then, quieter, "Hello, Leo." Leo's shoulders loosened just a little. "My daddy says when machines act strange, panicking makes everything feel worse than it is." A murmur moved through the room at that. Daniel. The janitor. Some people were just now putting together whose child this was. Inside the elevator, Evelyn let out a breath that scraped. "Your father says that. He fixes cleaning machines when they get stuck," Leo said. "And once he told me when things stop suddenly, the first thing you do is breathe slowly so your brain can think right." The woman didn't answer immediately. Leo kept going before the silence could swallow her. Can you look at one thing in the elevator and tell me what color it is? That made a few people in the lobby blink. Simple. Strange. Childish. But through the intercom came the answer. The handrail, Evelyn said. Silver. Good, Leo said softly. Now tell me something else you see. The pause was shorter this time. Floor buttons. Gold numbers. Good. He nodded as if each answer mattered enormously. What about your shoes? A few of the executives looked offended now, as though this was all beneath the dignity of a billionaire. But Leo did not care. My shoes. Evelyn said. Yes, A long breath. Then, black. Are they shiny? That earned an actual laugh from her this time. Small, trembling, but real. Yes. Okay, Leo said. That means you are still okay enough to notice things. Mara stared at her son like she was seeing him from a distance. He sounded older. Not like a little boy standing in a borrowed world under expensive lights, but like someone anchored, someone offering a rope to a person drifting into fear. Bradley looked furious and relieved at the same time. Two engineers burst through the lobby doors carrying equipment cases, followed by a maintenance supervisor already talking into a radio. They hurried toward the elevator bank, but one look from Bradley stopped them short. He pointed toward the child at the intercom and said in a low voice, "Do not interrupt him unless you have to." The maintenance supervisor frowned, confused. But then he heard the woman inside speaking calmly enough to answer questions. He understood. Leo leaned closer to the speaker. Evelyn. Yes. Can you put one hand on the wall? Yes. Is it cold? Yes. Okay. I want you to keep your hand there. That way you know exactly where you are. Inside the elevator, Evelyn obeyed. She didn't know why she obeyed a 10-year-old boy with a calm voice and worn sneakers and no reason to care about her. Maybe because everyone else sounded like people trying to protect a business deal. He sounded like someone trying to protect her. And there was a difference. She closed her eyes in the dim emergency light and placed her palm flat against the steel. Cold. Solid. Real. Good, Leo said. Now breathe in slowly for 4. She did. Now out for 4. Again. The trembling in her voice lessened. Outside, the engineers began their work, checking the control system, communicating through radios, preparing to manually reset the elevator and stabilize the cabin. But before they could begin, the system gave another warning buzz. The maintenance supervisor's head snapped up. That's not right, he muttered. Bradley's face tightened. What? The leveling sensor's not reading clean. What does that mean? It means, the supervisor said grimly, if this cabin shifted during the power dip, it may be sitting wrong. A hush spread through the lobby again. Mara clutched her own hands together until her knuckles whitened. Leo heard none of it. He only listened to Evelyn's breathing. Are you still there? She asked through the speaker. Yes, he said. There was something fragile in the next word she spoke. Please don't go. Leo looked at the elevator doors. And said the sentence that would later be repeated in newspapers, interviews, and boardrooms across the city. I won't. Then the emergency lights in the elevator failed. And Evelyn started screaming again. Darkness between floors. The scream that burst through the speaker was different this time. Before, it had been fear. Now it was terror. Raw. Uncontrolled. The kind that made even the hardest faces in the lobby lose color. The emergency light inside the elevator had gone out completely. Somewhere deep in the shaft, a relay clicked and died. The red floor indicator over the center elevator vanished, leaving only a blank black panel. For a second, it felt as if the entire building had stopped breathing. Then the lobby exploded into motion. Why are the emergency lights down? Get backup power online. Call the fire department. Now. Bradley barked orders at everyone and no one at once. Security scrambled. The receptionist was crying openly now. One executive had stepped away and was furiously whispering into his phone about liability, legal exposure, investor confidence. Mara had started praying under her breath. And Leo? Leo stayed exactly where he was. He swallowed hard at the sound of Evelyn Vale panicking in total darkness, then pressed closer to the speaker. Evelyn! Evelyn, listen to me! No answer except sobbing breath and the thud of movement from inside the elevator. The maintenance supervisor lunged toward the panel. Tell her not to push on the doors. Leo repeated it instantly. Please don't push the doors. The men fixing it need you to stay still. Inside the car came a scraping sound, then silence, then ragged breathing. She can't see, Mara whispered, horrified. No one answered her. Leo lowered his voice. Evelyn, can you hear me? A shaky inhale. Then, it's dark. I know. I can't, her voice broke. I can't do this. Leo's chest tightened. He was only 10. He did not know billionaires. He did not know about emergency operations. He did not know mergers or liability or elevator mechanics. But he knew what fear sounded like when it wanted to swallow someone whole. Because he had heard it from his mother on nights when she thought he was asleep and the bills were due. Because he had heard it in his father's silence after losing his old job before janitorial work saved them. Because poor families knew panic intimately. I visited it often. It sat at dinner tables. It slept at the edge of beds. It spoke in whispers behind closed doors. So Leo said the only thing he knew would cut through it. Then don't do all of it, he whispered. Just do the next thing. There was a pause on the line. What? Evelyn asked. Don't think about getting out yet. Just think about the next thing. The lobby had gone strangely still again. Even the engineers slowed, listening while they worked. What next thing? She whispered. Leo looked down at his own hand. Put your hand back on the wall, he said. Inside the elevator, Evelyn obeyed blindly. Is it there? Yes. Good. That means the wall is real. And if the wall is real, then you are real. And if you are real, then you are still here with me. Mara closed her eyes, tears pressing at them now. How did he know how to say things like that? Maybe because children who grew up with uncertainty learned how to hold on to small certainties. The maintenance supervisor muttered to his engineers, stabilizer brace first. Then manual release. Bradley spun toward him. How long? The man did not look up. Longer if people keep shouting. Bradley shut his mouth. At the speaker, Evelyn's breathing steadied by a small fraction. Leo took that as a victory. Can you count numbers with me? He asked. What good will that do? It gives your brain something to follow. A pause. Then, weary and frightened and strangely willing, Evelyn said, Fine. Leo began counting slowly. 1. Inside the elevator, 1. 2. 2. The lobby stood captive to the sound. A poor boy in a faded uniform. A billionaire woman trapped in darkness. And an entire tower of wealth and power suddenly depending on the calm voice of someone none of them would have greeted on any normal day. When they reached 10, Leo started over. Then again. By the third round, Evelyn's breaths had become deeper. The maintenance supervisor crouched beside the control panel. Good, he murmured, almost T-O himself. Keep her still. Then came new trouble. One of the engineers looked up from his instrument and swore under his breath. What? Bradley demanded. The car's not just stalled, the engineer said. The temporary power surge fried part of the communication relay. That speaker could go dead any minute. Mara's heart lurched. Leo looked over his shoulder, hearing only part of it, enough to understand the danger. If the line went dead, Evelyn would be alone in darkness again. He turned back to the speaker immediately. Evelyn. Yes. I need you to listen carefully in case the sound gets weird. A beat of silence. No. No, don't say that. Listen to me. If it stops, you do what we already did. Silence. Hand on the wall, Leo reminded her. A shaky inhale. Is something wrong? Leo almost lied. But there was something in her voice that sounded like she needed honesty more than comfort. The men are fixing things, he said carefully. But the speaker might stop working for a bit. The breath on the other end quickened again. No. No, don't say that. Listen to me. If it stops, you do what we already did. Silence. Hand on the wall, Leo reminded her. A shaky inhale. Hand on the wall, she repeated. Then find one thing to name. Yes. Then count. Yes. And then remember I'm still out here even if you can't hear me. The quiet that followed was so deep the whole lobby felt it. Then Evelyn spoke softly into the failing speaker. Why are you helping me? Leo didn't have to think. Because you're scared. Not because you're rich. Not because you're important. Not because the whole building is panicking over your name. Because you're scared. The simplicity of it hit the room like a truth no one wanted but everyone needed. The speaker crackled. Popped. Then died. Evelyn vanished into silence. Mara gasped. The receptionist cried out. Bradley cursed. But Leo stayed staring at the metal doors as if sheer will could send his voice through them. Then, from somewhere above in the service corridor, came the sound of boots pounding down concrete stairs. Daniel was coming. And he had no idea yet that his son had become the only thing holding the tower together. The janitor arrives. Daniel Cole entered the lobby carrying a mop handle in one hand and a ring of maintenance keys clipped to his belt, breathless from running down 3 flights of service stairs. At first, he saw only confusion. Engineers crouched at the elevator controls. Security at every entrance. Executives pale and furious. His wife was crying. His son was standing too close to trouble. Then he saw the dead black screen over the center elevator. And he understood. Leo, he shouted, crossing the marble floor in long, urgent strides. Step away from there. Leo turned at the sound of his father's voice, relief flashing across his face for just a second before worry replaced it. Daddy, the woman inside. Daniel reached him and put both hands on his shoulders, searching his face for signs that he'd been hurt. Are you okay? Leo nodded quickly. She's scared. The speaker went out. Daniel looked from his son to the stalled elevator to the cluster of engineers and immediately read the scene better than the tower executives ever could. Machines. Confusion. People with titles crowding people with actual knowledge. Bradley Hurst stepped forward. Mr. Cole, take your family out of the lobby. Daniel straightened slowly. The exhaustion of years lived in his face, nights spent cleaning floors nobody thanked him for, mornings leaving home before sunrise, the quiet dignity of a man used to being dismissed. But now there was something else in his expression. Steel. My boy says someone's trapped in there. Bradley's jaw tightened. This is being handled. Daniel glanced at the control panel, the sensor kit, the open maintenance hatch, and the powerless speaker. Then why's the comm line dead? The question hung in the air. One of the engineers looked up sharply at Daniel. You know these systems. Not like you do, Daniel said, but I know enough to recognize burnt relay smell. The engineer blinked, then actually sniffed the air. He looked annoyed with himself for missing it. Daniel was right. Mara watched the exchange with a strange mix of fear and pride. She had always known her husband was smart. Life had simply not rewarded him for it. Years earlier, before layoffs and factory closures and bad timing crushed his chances, Daniel had worked in industrial maintenance. He understood motors, emergency lock systems, weight sensors, misaligned tracks. He had never become the man he might have been. Poverty had interrupted that story. Now, in a polished tower where nobody knew his past, he was once again just the janitor. Except not quite. The maintenance supervisor stood and faced him. You smelled the relay from over there. Daniel nodded. The supervisor looked toward the control box and swore softly. The auxiliary audio channel's gone too. Bradley's patience snapped. I don't care about technical details. I care about getting Ms. Vale out now. And rushing the release when the car may be resting unevenly could make this worse, the supervisor said flatly. That shut Bradley up again. Leo tugged his father's sleeve. Daddy, she listened to me before the speaker broke. Daniel looked down. You talked to her. Leo nodded. She was panicking. Mara added softly, he calmed her down. Daniel stared at his son for a moment, then placed a rough, warm hand on the back of his neck. Not to pull him away. To steady him. You did good, he said. No one in the room missed the words. You did good. The kind of praise poor children lived on for months. Daniel turned toward the elevator and listened. Really listened. Under the lobby hush, beneath the hum of backup systems and radio chatter, there it was, a faint irregular tension sound from the shaft. Not catastrophic. But it's not safe to rush either. He spoke to the maintenance supervisor in a low voice. If the cabin is slightly off level and the passenger is panicking, you'll still need her before you try manual release. We had that, the man said, frustration grinding in his tone. Then the audio died. Daniel looked up at the elevator bank. Then toward the service corridor. Then back at the supervisor. There's an access gap at 19, he said. The engineer frowned. Only partial. Enough to hear through if someone leans close. The supervisor's eyes narrowed. How do you know that? I clean the service landings every Thursday. For the first time since the emergency began, someone in authority looked at Daniel not like furniture, but like a map. Show me, the supervisor said. Bradley opened his mouth. Absolutely not. He's not authorized. But before he could finish, the elevator gave a small, sickening shift. Everyone in the lobby froze. From inside came one desperate bang against the metal. Mara clutched Leo to her chest. Daniel turned back with his face changed. No hesitation left in it now. She needs a voice, he said. My son gave her one. If the speaker's dead, we find another way. Bradley glared. This building is not run by janitors and children. Daniel's answer came out calm, but sharp enough to cut. No, sir. But right now it might be saved by one. A silence followed that no amount of money in the room could overpower. Then, unexpectedly, the decision was made not by Bradley, but by the faint voice that drifted from inside the shaft above. Not through the speaker. Not through a system. Just barely audible through metal and distance. Leo. Everyone heard it. The woman in the elevator was calling for the janitor's son. The maintenance supervisor grabbed a flashlight. Move, he ordered his team. Daniel took Leo's hand in one of his and reached for Mara with the other. Stay close. Mara hesitated, terrified. Daniel. He looked at her, and in that glance she saw the truth. For once, they were not following Wealth. Wealth was following them. They headed toward the service access corridor while security scrambled to clear a path. Behind them, Bradley Hurst stood in the center of his perfect lobby and realized, with slowly dawning horror, that the people he had treated as invisible might be the only ones who could save the most important guest his building had ever hosted. And up on the 19th floor service landing, in the narrow dark beside the shaft, a frightened billionaire woman was waiting for the voice of a child. Beside the shaft. The 19th floor service landing was nothing like the polished lobby below. There was no marble here. No chandeliers. No perfume. Only grey concrete, utility pipes, exposed wiring, and the stale smell of dust, hot metal, and machine oil. The fluorescent light above flickered unevenly, making the corridor feel even narrower. Far below, the city pressed against the tower windows in glittering distance, but here, in the hidden bones of the building, Wealth had no elegance. This was where workers came. Where delivery men wheeled crates. Where cleaners refilled supplies. Where no billionaire ever intended to be near. Daniel led the way with quick, certain steps. Leo kept pace beside him, eyes wide but focused. Mara followed close, her hands cold, her heart knocking violently in her ribs. The maintenance supervisor and two engineers rushed ahead with flashlights and pry tools, radios crackling at their hips. At the service access panel beside the elevator shaft, the supervisor yanked open the narrow inspection hatch. A hollow mechanical space opened before them. The elevator cabin was there, wedged below floor level, misaligned by maybe 1.5 feet. Not enough to drop, but enough to complicate any release. A sliver of the top corner of the elevator car was visible through the gap, along with a thin strip of shadow where metal met concrete. And from that darkness came a voice. Hello. Weak. Frayed. Humans. Leo lunged forward instinctively, but Daniel caught his shoulder before he got too close to the exposed opening. Easy. Then Daniel crouched near the hatch and called down in a controlled voice, Ms. Vale? My name is Daniel Cole. I'm with Building Maintenance Support. My son Leo is here. A small sound came from below, half laugh, half sob. Leo. The boy dropped to his knees beside the opening. I'm here. Mara covered her mouth again. Even now, even trapped and terrified, the woman's first question was for him. Through the darkness came an audible exhale of relief. Thank God. One of the engineers muttered under his breath, she trusts the kid. Daniel shot him a look that said, then act like it matters. Leo leaned close enough for his voice to carry, but not close enough for danger. Evelyn, can you hear me better now? Yes, she said. Yes, a little. The sound echoed strangely through the shaft. The maintenance supervisor studied the cabin position, checked the rail alignment with his flashlight, then spoke to Daniel quietly. We can stabilize from here and initiate a controlled manual level. But she must stay away from the door. Daniel nodded. Leo was already ahead of him. Evelyn, he said gently, can you sit down on the floor? A pause. Why? So you won't fall if it moves. The answer came after a shaky breath. All right. Metal rustled below as she obeyed. The supervisor gave Leo a single firm nod of approval, then signaled his engineers to begin. One moved toward the override crank assembly. Another checked the brake release status. Every motion was careful, deliberate, practiced. Still, Mara could see tension in their shoulders. This was not routine anymore. Below them, Evelyn spoke into the darkness. Leo. Yes. Are you really 10? He blinked. Yes. A faint, exhausted sound that might have been a smile entered her voice. You sound older. Daniel looked down at his son and thought, sometimes he is. Leo rested one hand on the cold concrete floor. My teacher says when people are scared, they borrow calm from each other. Silence followed. Then Evelyn whispered, That's a good teacher. She is. The supervisor raised one hand. Everyone quieted. He turned the crank slowly. A deep mechanical groan rolled through the shaft. The elevator cabin shivered, then shifted by what felt like a hair. Mara gasped and grabbed Daniel's arm. Leo stiffened. Inside the car, Evelyn sucked in a frightened breath. Stay seated. Daniel called immediately. I am. The engineer watched the alignment marks. Again, he said. The supervisor turned the crank another fraction. The elevator rose slightly. Not enough. The engineer shook his head. Still low. Sweat gathered at Daniel's temple, though the corridor was cool. The old instincts of machine work had returned to him fully now. He saw the weight distribution, heard the brake strain, sensed the slight resistance in the mechanism. Then he noticed it. Stop. The supervisor froze. What? Daniel pointed with 2 fingers. Cable tensions pulling uneven on the left. The engineer crouched lower, flashing the beam upward. His eyes widened. His right. Bradley Hurst, who had finally arrived at the corridor entrance with 2 guards and a panic-red face, snapped, What does that mean now? It means, the supervisor said without looking at him, we correct for that before another level attempt. Bradley looked close to shouting, but one glance at the shaft stopped him. This was real now in a way boardrooms never were. There were no talking points here. Only gravity, machinery, and consequence. Leo heard Evelyn breathing faster again. Talk to me, she whispered. He leaned close. I'm here. I don't want to die in an elevator. The hallway went still. Mara shut her eyes. One engineer looked down. Even Bradley stopped moving. Children were not supposed to hear sentences like that. But Leo answered with painful simplicity. You won't. How do you know? Because children sometimes believed courage could become truth if spoken clearly enough, Leo said, because too many people are working too hard to let that happen. Daniel's eyes burned. The maintenance supervisor adjusted the cable compensation and muttered, All right. One more. The crank turned again. This time the elevator rose smoothly, just enough for the door edge to align closer to floor level. The engineer grinned in disbelief. That's it. We've got it. But before relief could spread, the mechanism gave a sharp metallic snap. Everything stopped. The engineer's face drained. What was that? Mara whispered. Nobody answered immediately. Then the supervisor spoke the words everyone feared. The release linkage just jammed. And below them, in the dark, Evelyn Vale began to cry. The jammed release. Panic moved through the service corridor like cold wind. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just sudden and total. The maintenance supervisor stepped back from the mechanism as if willing it to unbreak. One engineer cursed under his breath. The other bent instantly toward the jammed release linkage with his flashlight, searching for the failure point. Bradley Hurst went white and started demanding answers in a voice that was already too high. Mara's knees weakened. Leo looked from one adult face to another and understood what children always understood before adults admitted it. Something had gone wrong. Really wrong. In the elevator below, Evelyn's crying grew softer, not louder, and that frightened Leo more than the screaming had. It sounded like someone running out of strength. Evelyn, he called down. No answer. He tried again, louder this time. Evelyn. Finally, her voice came back, thin, shaky, exhausted. I'm here. Daniel crouched closer, every muscle in his body tight. Miss Vale, listen carefully. We are still with you. There's a mechanical jam, but nobody is leaving. He chose those words on purpose. Mechanical jam, not disaster. Nobody is leaving, not you are trapped. The maintenance supervisor popped the side cover off the linkage assembly and swore softly. Bent guide pin. Can you clear it? Daniel asked. Maybe. Maybe. The man looked at him grimly. If I force it wrong, the door release could seize completely. Bradley exploded. Then don't force it wrong. Nobody bothered responding. Leo kept his focus on the opening. Evelyn. A pause. Then, I'm sorry. His brow furrowed. For what? For being afraid. Leo glanced up at his parents, confused by the apology. That's okay. The answer came naturally, instantly. Because to children, fear was not shameful until adults taught them it was. Inside the elevator, Evelyn let out a breath that hitched on the edge of another sob. The darkness around her felt tighter now, heavier, like the walls had inched inward. Her hand still pressed against the cold wall exactly as Leo had told her. Her legs were trembling. Her back ached from sitting on the hard floor. All her life, people had described her as formidable, unshakable, ruthless, brilliant. No one had ever described her as scared. But in the darkness, titles became ridiculous things. Leo, she whispered, is your mother there? The boy looked at Mara. Yes. Mara startled. Me. Daniel touched her elbow gently. She swallowed and stepped closer to the opening, though terror still prickled through her skin. Yes, she said softly. I'm here. Evelyn's voice cracked. Was he always like this? Mara looked down at her son. At the careful seriousness in his face. The way he listened with his whole body. The way he stood in danger not because he didn't understand fear, but because someone else needed help more. Yes, Mara whispered. Always. Silence answered her from below. Then the maintenance supervisor straightened suddenly. I need thinner hands. Everyone stared. He pointed toward the partially exposed release housing. The guide pin bent inward. My fingers are too big to reset the catch without full disassembly. One engineer tried. Failed immediately. The second engineer tried with a narrow tool. The angle was wrong. Bradley looked ready to implode. Then disassemble it. It'll take too long, the supervisor said. And if power fluctuates again while we're mid-process. He stopped. Because they all knew what that could mean. Daniel looked at the gap. Then at his own hand. Then at Leo's. No, Mara said at once, before anyone even spoke the thought aloud. Daniel turned sharply. I didn't say anything. You were thinking about it. She was right. Leo's hands were small enough to reach. Too small. Far too small. Daniel immediately hated himself for even seeing the possibility. The supervisor seemed to read the same thought and shut it down instantly. Absolutely not. Mara almost sagged with relief. Then Leo looked up. I do it. No, Mara and Daniel said together. Leo blinked. Daniel crouched and held his son's shoulders firmly. Listen to me. This is not your job. But if my hand fits. It is not your job. The force in Daniel's voice silenced him. For a moment. Then from inside the elevator came a weak thud, followed by a gasp. Evelyn. Daniel's head snapped back toward the shaft. Ms. Vale. I got dizzy, she whispered. The maintenance supervisor looked suddenly alarmed. How long has she been in there now? One engineer checked. 28 minutes since the stall. She needs out. Bradley stared at the jammed linkage, then at the gap, then finally at Leo. For the first time all day, he looked less like a man protecting status and more like a man cornered by truth. But Mara saw that look and stepped in front of her son at once. No. Nobody argued. Daniel's jaw flexed hard enough to hurt. Every poor parent knew this feeling. The horror of realizing the world might ask something from your child it would never ask from the protected children of the wealthy. Leo tugged lightly at his mother's sleeve. Mama. No. She needs help. Mara bent to his level, tears bright in her eyes now. You are my baby. The corridor went painfully quiet. Leo's face changed, not defiant, not childish. Just full of impossible understanding. I know, he said. Down below, Evelyn found enough strength to speak again. Don't make the boy do anything dangerous. Daniel shut his eyes briefly. Even trapped in darkness, the woman had enough conscience left to say that. The supervisor exhaled sharply and knelt again by the jam. Let me think. The seconds stretched. Too long. Far too long. Then Daniel suddenly moved. Not toward Leo. Toward the service closet halfway down the corridor. He disappeared inside and came back with a slim-handled floor squeegee, a broken plastic tie strap, and a small inspection mirror from a cleaning cart. The engineers stared. Daniel knelt beside the jammed housing and said quietly, "If I can angle the mirror under the catch, use the tie strap as a guide, and push with this." The supervisor's face lit with sudden comprehension. "You might reset it without opening the whole assembly." Daniel handed him the mirror. "Might." The man didn't waste time asking why a janitor thought like a field technician. He just took the tools. And for the first time that day, the people in the corridor stopped seeing Daniel Cole as the man who scrubbed their floors. And started seeing him as the man who might save the tower. The man behind the mop. The maintenance supervisor lay flat on the concrete floor, one arm jammed awkwardly into the exposed release housing, the inspection mirror angled beneath the bent guide pin while Daniel held a flashlight steady over his shoulder. No one spoke above a whisper now. Not Bradley. Not security. Not the engineers. The corridor had become a place where titles had lost value. Only usefulness mattered. Daniel watched the mechanism with the intensity of a man returning, piece by piece, to a life he had once almost had. The smell of hot wiring, the cramped angle of repair work, the improvised tool solution, none of it felt foreign. It felt painfully familiar. Mara saw it too. She saw the old version of her husband flicker back to life in the set of his jaw and the confidence in his hands. Before the layoffs. Before debts. Before one bad year became another and another until all his skill had been packed into silence because survival left no room for pride. The supervisor muttered, "A little higher." Daniel adjusted the beam. "No, left. Left." He adjusted again. The engineer beside them held his breath. Below, in the elevator, Evelyn was quiet except for her uneven breathing. Leo stayed near the opening, speaking to her every few seconds so the silence would not swallow her. "I'm still here. They're still working. You're doing good." Simple things. Steady things. The kind of words that held broken moments together. Bradley Hurst stood a few feet back, immaculate tie loosened now, expensive shoes dusted with corridor grime, face stripped of its usual authority. He kept glancing between Daniel and Leo with an expression he did not know how to hide anymore. Shame. Because the building's polished image, all its systems and protocols and carefully assigned ranks, had failed. And the invisible people had stepped in where prestige could not. The maintenance supervisor suddenly stopped moving. Wait. No one breathed. He twisted the broken tie strap delicately with 2 fingers, using it to nudge the bent pin toward alignment. A click sounded. Tiny. Sharp. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Did it sit? The supervisor tested the linkage with almost unbearable care. Once. Twice. Then he looked up. Yes. Air rushed out of the whole corridor at once. Mara let out a sound halfway between a sob and a laugh. One engineer actually slapped the wall in relief. Even Bradley sagged visibly. But Daniel held up a hand. Not done. The billionaire is still trapped in the elevator, while Leo is still there with her. Watch out for part 2. Coming soon. Please like, share, comment and subscribe to this channel. It helps us to bring you amazing stories to brightening your day. Please tap the subscribe button. Love you guys.